Hey everyone.
Hi, I'm Mike, Marketing Manager here at Wavestreaming. This is James, our founder. So thanks for tuning into this webinar. So it's been a while since we did the last webinar, and we've covered a lot of things during this time. We've released an Android app, making it easier for you to broadcast to Android devices. We've released our iPhone app builder and upgraded it, and brought the look and feel of the design up to date.
Yeah.
We've welcomed thousands of new stations to the Wavestreaming platform, and we've continued to innovate with new products like Wavestreaming Backup, which is the easiest way to share files in the cloud. So, yeah, it's been
It's over 10 years since the company started, obviously, back in April of 2004, so we just celebrated our 10th birthday this year, which is very exciting. It's great, obviously, for a tech company to survive 10 years is fantastic, because 10 years in internet terms is a very, very long time. So let's get started. We're going to cut now to the webinar that we prepared for you. What we'll do is we'll periodically break out from this just to have kind of informal chat, and at the end what we're going to do is we're going to open up question and answer. So if you've got any questions that you would like to ask us, please write them down through the course of the webinar, and as I say, we're happy to help you out and answer as many as we can at the end.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
let's
Okay. Okay, actually, just before we start, I was just going to mention we've actually got an exclusive giveaway for people, haven't we?
So we're going to be announcing that at the end of the webinar. It's a $49 value. We're going to be giving away for free to anyone who watches the webinar, and obviously we'll announce that right at the end, so stay tuned.
Okay, so today we're going to cover, initially we're going to look at the radio landscape in 2014. So we'll start by recapping what's been happening in the industry over the last year. We'll look at where and how people are listening, where the growth areas are, and what this means for you and your station. Then we're going to look in a bit more detail at internet radio versus traditional radio. And we'll discuss what the advantages are for online broadcasters and how your stations can take advantage of this. And then we're also going to do a bit of a case study about one of our stations who implemented some very interesting marketing tactics.
Yeah, it's really impressive, actually. I'm really excited to show people that.
It's great. Okay, and then lastly, we'll round it up with some of our predictions about where we think things are going to go over the next few years. Okay, so to start. So, the current state of internet radio. We've got some really interesting stats here for you, about people's listening habits and how they're changing. So firstly, and perhaps most excitingly for online broadcasters, nearly half of Americans now listen to radio online. So that's quite an impressive amount of people, really, isn't it?
Yeah, we've seen phenomenal increases. Some of the stats we've got today are really mind-blowing and awesome, actually. Really good if you're involved in the internet radio space.
Yeah.
Very reassuring to see things growing so much, because I think kind of what happened was there was obviously when the internet first sort of started taking off, and with the advent of Shoutcast in the kind of late 90s, there was this kind of big online radio boom back then. But in the kind of mid-noughties, I think they kind of it dipped a bit. There was a lot of online radio stations, the novelty wore off.
Yeah.
And because back then, obviously, people would actually have to go and sit at the computer to listen to it, and that was great when it first came out, but then novelty wore off. But what we've seen in recent years, as I say, the past 5 years, is things have really taken a turn on their heads.
Yeah, absolutely. So that 49.5% roughly equates to 159 million people, 600,000. I mean, that's a lot of people. It's a lot of potential listeners, basically.
Yeah, and this is just the US audience, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, absolutely. So all over, it's, these stats back up that things are looking very positive for online radio, I think, at the moment. So now, what that means, that leap of 7.5% in the last year. In the last 2 years. So since 2012. And what's better, these figures are expected to continue growing over the next few years. So whilst people are predicting that interest in traditional radio is declining, online radio is definitely showing no signs of slowing down. So we can look at these kind of figures here from 2012 to present day to where we're going to over the next couple of years. Now, I would say the likelihood is we'll probably surpass some of those figures over the next 2 years. If things continue to grow at the rate they are currently, I think we'll definitely be seeing more growth than what's predicted by experts. Now, obviously, traditional radio retains a place in a lot of people's lives, but really, I think the exciting growth does lie in online broadcasting. In fact, it's growing at such a pace at the moment that people are now referring to it as the new mainstream. So, again, yeah, if we look at this year-on-year growth, I think it's pretty safe to say that this is going to continue on an upward trajectory for people.
Totally, yeah.
So, online broadcasters like yourselves, you're perfectly positioned to take advantage of this. You know, a lot of the time, success requires a lot of hard work, but it often comes down to being in the right place at the right time. So, by being in there early, you have a huge advantage, I would say.
Yeah. And also by just really like knowing your audience. And I think that's fundamental. This is what a lot of the stuff we taught in our marketing courses, like Listener Magnet, which, by the way, we're working on a brand new version of Listener Magnet, which is due for release later in the summer. And Internet Radio Cache, which was a product we had last year, which kind of covered lots of ways to monetize your station and really bond with your audience. And the stuff that we teach in those courses is always just know your listeners, know your customer.
Yeah.
Because if you just kind of put a radio station up and just hope for the best, is not a great strategy. But if you really drill down to exactly what sort of people are going to be listening to your station, it's a great way to kind of get them on board.
Yeah, absolutely. So the top reasons people prefer internet radio are, now this first one's very interesting. So 44% of people are saying device availability. Now, essentially, I mean, that kind of makes sense for a lot of people, doesn't it? I mean, it's essentially, it's about convenience, isn't it? So going back to, in fact, should we just drop the slides at this point?
Yeah, this is a great
just
sort of reason to discuss.
Sorry, just bear with us one moment.
Mike doesn't know how to use the webinar.
I'm not very good with Googles.
Okay, we're back on.
Okay, yeah. So this device availability, 44% of people are saying that. Now, I think, going back to those figures, why we have seen such huge growth since 2012 is just the massive adoption of smartphones. Absolutely, you know. I
mean, I think these devices are no longer just a phone or, you know, someone to listen to your MP3 files or text messaging or email. They're really like hands-on media devices. And case in point, you know, if you're having a party now, or maybe you're having friends around for dinner and you want to put music on, some people, yes, they'll still have big old black box hi-fi set up in the corner of the living room, or, you know, they'll have like an actual radio in the kitchen. I know my parents do, but I think in terms of like, especially younger generation, they will all just like hook up their iPhones or their iPads to some kind of centralized speaker system. Now, that could be done just via a cable, like a headphone jack, or it could be done, you know, using something like more sophisticated, such as AirPlay, wireless streaming. Chromecast, of course, have now released a little dongle that you can plug in the back of your TV and you can mirror whatever's on your laptop. So systems like this are becoming more and more common. And how do people access radio on these devices? Well, they don't listen to it over the airwaves anymore, they listen to it online.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, rewind 20 years and kids were asking for Christmas presents or birthday presents. They wanted a Walkman, or they wanted a CD player for their bedroom, or, you know, like a hi-fi system. What do kids want now? Well, they want an iPad.
Yeah,
they want an iPhone.
Yeah.
Or even, you know, games consoles, that kind of thing. And then these are all internet-connected devices, and really, really crucially, can't tune into traditional FM radio on these devices. It has to be through the internet.
Yeah.
Have you got any more thoughts about it?
Well, yeah. I mean, I would say that again, that's just going to continue to grow, isn't it? Because, you know, if we look at, say, mobile device use, it's exploded over the last few years. I mean, since 2007, really, since the iPhone came out, it has exploded, definitely. And again, that will just continue and continue, like you say.
But again, it's become more, as you say, the internet radio has become mainstream for these reasons, because people aren't just getting an iPhone and then downloading the radio app is just for the people who are really into the radio or are really into a certain type of music. It's just everyone is doing it now. You know, I've got so many friends who will set the radio app and to wake them up at a certain time in the morning. So they'll want to maybe listen to, for example, like BBC Radio 1 in the UK here, and they'll set it so it wakes them. The radio app stays open overnight, as does ours at Wave Streaming. You know, we've got a timer feature built in. Radio starts playing at the time they specify, and that's how they wake up. They don't have a little box on the side of the bedside cupboard anymore listening to that.
Yeah.
It's through their phone.
Yeah, and people are listening through the TVs as well, like you say, with stuff like Chromecast. It's all there, definitely. Okay, so should we just pop this back up? Excellent. Managed to work it out that time.
More stats now then for you.
Okay, so next. So the next reason people are saying, is it that one? Yeah, that's it. Oh, hello. Sorry, just bear with us one moment. Technical difficulties with our presentation. There we go. So, the next stat. 41% of people say they prefer internet radio because less adverts, less commercials. I mean, again, this backs up a lot of research that we've been doing ourselves for a number of years, and it's something that we touch on a lot in our courses that James mentioned, Internet Radio Cache and Listener Magnet. We look in depth at how you can monetize your station, different ways to monetize your station, and again, this is a huge advantage for mainstream broadcasters. This is a huge advantage you have over mainstream broadcasters. A lot of those stations are very heavily reliant on adverts. And it disrupts the flow for people. People don't like adverts. That's why ad blockers exist, right?
Exactly. People don't like adverts. However, when people don't feel like they're being sold to or advertised to directly, they don't mind them. So it's all not just about not having advertising, but I think it's about how you're doing advertising.
Yeah.
When you're listening to a radio station, if the adverts are constantly played on, between the tracks or after the presenter's speaking, it does become really, really annoying. It's very invasive. Whereas, again, the internet gives you a platform where you can have advertising, but doesn't necessarily have to be as kind of forward or as invasive. Maybe there'll be an advert that plays when they first start listening, but then that will be it for, maybe you'll use other kind of advertising, or maybe you'll actually use the presenter's skill to promote certain products, but not doing it in a way where it's kind of, no one likes a pushy salesman, do they?
No.
But if you're recommending services or products or music for people and they're going to get value from them, that's fantastic.
Yeah, as long as it's relevant to the audience, it's going to be useful for them, isn't it, essentially?
Sure.
So again, the next stat, 38% of people say more choice. This is why they prefer internet radio. So when you consider the sheer amount of stations out there, this is always going to be an important factor for people. Again, this is about niches, isn't it, really? It's about, it's just an explosion of having a very specific niche, knowing your audience, and creating a station that's really dedicated to them.
Yeah.
And I think like that, again, that traditional broadcasters with their overheads, they can't really afford to do that. But obviously, if you want to see good growth, identify your niche, create something that feels really unique for them, and and then it goes from there, essentially.
Absolutely.
And next, so 34% of people say being able to see what's playing is important to them. Now, this actually surprised me a little bit.
Yeah, I think this one's really interesting. This is something, obviously, that you don't get with sort of traditional radio as much. I mean, sometimes, you might have some text which scrolls on the thing, but no one sits there staring at this. But again, you can give your customers or your listeners a real rich experience by showing things like the album art and showing them, giving them choice of things that they can then go and take away and actually download themselves and listen to again and again.
Yeah.
Fantastic way of discovering new music, and this is really, really what this one boils down to, I think.
Yeah, definitely. It's about sense of community as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Definitely. It's just knowing that other people are listening to the same song as you all around the world.
Yeah. Okay,
so next, 33% of people say clearer signal. Now, high quality stream, that's obviously very important. As online broadcasters, you'll know that.
Yeah.
And, being online, you are able to provide a much higher quality of broadcast, essentially, aren't you?
Yeah, and it's really exciting as well because music enthusiasts get to enjoy music as it should be enjoyed. Chris, it sounds the same as buying a CD or downloading the MP3. There's really little, sound degradation when you're broadcasting 128K at MP3 or if you're broadcasting in AAC. Absolutely perfect for streaming. But sounds great if you're playing it through a decent quality set of speakers, or if you're listening to it on the move, or using your Beats or your iPhone headphones or whatever it might be. So That's a good one.
Yeah, I guess it's a bit of a no-brainer, really, isn't it? So what's driving this growth? I mean, as we've said, rather unsurprisingly, the biggest driver of this growth is mobile usage.
Yeah.
So this now accounts for 50% of people's online listening hours, which, you know, it's a very, very large percentage, that, without a doubt. And, you know, whilst people are also still listening to radio on their desktops, you know, that is a higher number.
Yeah.
They are also using dedicated apps, which is very interesting.
You know, we love apps, don't we?
Yeah.
You know, apps have become very, very important to us over the past couple of years, and will continue being so. You know, apps will still be very important in the future.
Yeah.
So, you know, having your own app for your station is critical, really, to ensure that you're connecting with your audience.
Yeah, it's the easiest way for you to essentially tap into this growth, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
The app stores have can make or break businesses.
Yeah.
And obviously, it used to be a case of the Google devices, Android devices. There wasn't really a great app store for them, whereas obviously now they've definitely caught up. They've created a really good experience with Google Play for people to discover new apps.
Yeah, they have, and there's so many people on Android, actually, isn't there?
Yeah.
I mean, it's huge, that, and, you know, and overall things are growing. So ad revenue in 2013 was actually, where's this number? Was a staggering $970 million, and by 2016, that's predicted to grow to 1.31 billion. So I think this is really interesting, because whilst ad revenue for internet radio is increasing, in most other areas except video, it's decreasing. So, I mean, I think that's a really interesting thing. So ultimately, it's because internet radio audiences, as we've said, are often niche, which means they tend to be a highly engaged demographic. You know, and as we've seen, they're embracing internet radio and on an increasing number of platforms.
Yeah.
So this is going to naturally appeal to marketing people.
Well, exactly. Yeah.
You know,
I mean, you need to embrace the fact that people are always logged in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, this is it. Marketers go where the audiences are, and the fact that ad revenue is increasing in radio is a very, very good sign.
Yeah, so these are really interesting comparison with some kind of dual stats. Each one of these kind of has two things. And the important thing to note is we'll just draw you aware to the fact that obviously 41 plus 35 doesn't equal 100. So the rest of those votes, what do they mean? They
would have been either or neither, I guess, essentially. Yeah. So that would have been.
But this is actually, you know, some people have actually gone out and figured this stuff out, which is really great for us and as broadcasters. So where were these stats from?
These stats are from Edison and Pew Research. So these are big research companies, very, very well-known research companies.
So yeah, this is legitimate stuff.
Yeah, and I think afterwards what we'll probably do is we're going to take some of this information and we're going to package it up into infographics for people, just so they can visually kind of see these areas of growth for themselves. So yeah, I mean, whether it's live streaming or whether it's on demand, both areas are growing.
Yeah, but it's interesting to see that a lot more, you know, there's still a higher number of people listening to live streaming.
Well, exactly, yeah.
Demand services.
Yeah, I mean, no, I think that's really important personally. I mean, if you think about it, a lot of media attention gets focused on sites like Spotify and on-demand sites. That's really where all the focus is. But actually, there's a higher percentage of people that are interested in live streaming.
I think that's just because those companies have been working so hard. The live streaming industry has always existed online, well, at least for the past 15 years anyway. But I think it's those kind of companies like Spotify, like SoundCloud, they have almost created this new industry. So the media are all over it because obviously the media like what's new. But there's still a considerable number of people actually listening to live radio streaming, which is important for people to realise. And I think part of that comes down to there is a certain kind of magic you get from listening to a live radio station. You don't know what to expect, and it is surprising. And also, it doesn't really, there's no effort. You don't have to go and search through stuff, and then if you don't like something, then choose something else. It's just kind of on. You can put it on in the background and just go.
Yeah, no. Well, this is it. Yeah, I mean, I'd agree definitely. This is about radio's unique value proposition, and it's something that Spotify and Pandora just don't have.
Yeah.
You know, it provides people a sense of community, and that's normally based around talent as well. And I'd say, you know, For example, like from a personal perspective, I love listening to certain DJs and radio stations, and no algorithm's ever really going to be able to compete with that, I don't think.
Of human curated music.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, if I want to discover new music, I do that through DJs that I love.
Yep.
You know, and I don't do it through Spotify's Discover page, essentially. So, yeah, and actually, just before we move on, I think that just the point really to make here is that services like that, on-demand services, they're not competitive. They're actually complementary to what you're doing.
Yes, exactly. So I think, one lesson to take away from that is these guys are putting loads of effort into marketing their products and services like Spotify and SoundCloud, and Mixcloud, right? So, and there's obviously Deezer and various other
loads of them,
live streaming platforms. Now you can actually take advantage of this, and rather than seeing them as, I'm losing listeners to these kind of the services, well, you can actually gain listeners from these services, can't you? Yeah,
no, completely. Yeah, I mean, you should have a presence on all of these things. I mean, if you've got a broadcast that you're doing, package your shows up, put them on SoundCloud.
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, there's loads of sites. SoundCloud, there's a few others. Mixcloud is one. Obviously, with Spotify, you can create playlists and regularly update them. Or if you've finished a show and people want to go and listen back to it, well, you could actually just create a playlist of all the songs you played in that show. Or there's loads of just create use playlists to pull in listeners who follow particular artists who are searching for that sort of thing.
Well, this is it. If consumers are congregating on those sites, you should be on those sites in some way, shouldn't you?
So moving on then.
So, internet radio versus traditional radio. Now, again, as we've discussed, internet radio is beating traditional radio in terms of ad revenue and in terms of engagement. So, amongst people who listen to radio, the top places that they're listening to are at home. So, again, it's beating FM. At work, so sorry, boss, but that's just the case.
Yeah.
And on public transport, which is a no-brainer. That's mobile, isn't it? And interestingly, the only place where traditional is beating online is in the car.
Yeah.
Now,
which is, I guess, to be expected, really. But I do think these figures are interesting, and I think, if we went back 5 years, 2009, and certainly 10 years ago when we launched Wavestream in 2004, these figures were very, very different. I reckon probably 2004 online streaming would have been like below 5% of a lot of these, and especially when out and about. Very interesting to see that people are now switching to online and at home and at work. It's fantastic. It's good to see.
No, and then with the car thing again, that'll change over the next few years, definitely.
Yeah, obviously these really are, as online broadcasters, these give us a significant advantage now.
Yeah, so I mean, again, this is about providing as much convenience as you can for your listeners. So if someone starts off listening to your station while they're at their desktop at work, they might then switch to their mobile app for the journey home, and it's about you providing all of these touch points for people. The more convenient you make things, the more likely they are to be engaged. And, with 80% of people saying they listen to between 1 to 3 hours of internet radio per day, it's pretty fair to say that they are highly engaged. And compared to 1 year ago, 70% of people say they're listening to more internet radio. So, again, this is a very positive thing, isn't it? And of that time spent listening to internet radio, 47% of people say it's replacing traditional radio in their listening habits.
Sure.
So again, that will continue, definitely. And I think we can testify to this. Like people that use our tools, such as the web player and the Twitter app, they often get in touch and tell us that it's incredible for listener engagement and for increasing their listenership. So, as we've already discussed, the big driver of this is mobile, but the other huge catalyst for pushing growth in internet radio is social media. So, social's fueling the success of online radio because users from all over the world can discover your station, they can share it with their friends and family, and, that's something traditional radio just can't offer. You can connect directly with your niche, and ultimately, internet radio is just an inherently social experience, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And one last stat for you before we get rid of the presentation, which is very interesting, I think. 9% of all public radio streaming happens on TuneIn.
Yeah, this is fantastic.
That's huge.
Yeah, and I think this basically just suggests that if you're not on TuneIn, if you're not listed, it's a directory of radio stations, very much like Shoutcast. But TuneIn, you can add any existing radio station, whether it be broadcasting on Shoutcast or Icecast, or perhaps even some other platforms. You can add them into TuneIn, and TuneIn will automatically list your station. It will show the song that's playing, and they've got a great experience for actual listeners as well. In terms of online, they've got a good website where you can search for your artists that are currently playing, or you can search for specific types of station. Likewise, they've got a couple of mobile apps. They've got a free version and a premium version. The premium version offers listeners lots of functionality, like being able to pause the stream and all this kind of thing.
Yeah.
So TuneIn is an awesome service. We really like what they're doing here at Wave Streaming, and I think that's quite an impressive figure, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean,
it's only been around really a couple of years, 3-4 years maybe.
Yeah, and again, that's just going to keep continuing to grow. I mean, they've just restructured their entire kind of online experience, and social's just baked into the core of what their product is.
Yeah, but I think this also suggests that there's always going to be room for competition, and obviously. Shoutcast is having some work done to it at the moment. There's a couple of other radio directories which we've been looking at recently.
Stitch is a good one.
Yeah. So
if you're not on there,
there's going to be lots of these services around, all providing different spins on that kind of experience for listeners. And it wouldn't even surprise me if eventually we start seeing niche directories. So we start seeing directories which are just have stations on with certain types of music. Just targeted towards a certain demographic.
Yeah, I think that's totally true.
If you're part of that niche, it could be great.
Absolutely. Okay, so I think that's the end of the presentation.
Okay.
So let's get rid of that.
So we're back on.
Yeah, so we're back.
Here we are. And what we're going to do now is we're going to enable the
Q&As.
How do we do this?
I think if you just click there.
Q&A is disabled.
So we should now be able to get that. Okay, so just bear with us one moment. Sorry about this. Okay, so let's have a look. Can I do that?
So probably best if.
Okay, I think we might have had a bit of an issue with the Q&A. Shall I just carry on while you go and?
Yeah, I'll go and have a word with Jamie and see if we get this sorted.
Cool. Okay, so just bear with us one moment. Sorry about this. Okay, so so going back to what we were saying, ultimately, internet radio, it provides a sense of community for your listeners. So knowing that other people are tuning in at the same time as you, that's one of the core things that internet radio has. Ultimately, as online broadcasters, you can use technology to create an incredibly strong bond with your audience. You can be listened to at any time of the day, anywhere in the world, and on any device increasingly. So as we were saying, platforms like SoundCloud, they're not radio, but they are audio based, and you can take advantage of them. And if you're not, you really should be. That would be absolutely something that we would recommend. Alternatively, going back to Spotify, again, it's just another platform where you can be. How are we looking?
Had word from Jamie, who's been monitoring things, and basically there is a box below the video, which obviously we can't see or listen, but if you're watching this on the Google Plus page, you should be able to type your questions into a box and ask them. Jamie is on hand. He's going to start passing us questions live. So what we'd like you to do, we want to answer your questions live. There's obviously a slight delay on this stream, but we're going to try and get through as a couple. So if you've got any questions about any of the things we've talked about today, particularly around the areas of mobile broadcasting, or if you've just got any questions about internet radio in general, perhaps you're interested in starting a radio station, or you've got a radio station, you're not sure how to take it to the next level, we're really just kind of fairly open this afternoon. Yeah,
definitely. I think what we should do now is probably look at K-Pop Way, our case study.
Okay.
So where are we on here? Yeah. This is good.
So what we're going to do now is we're going to switch to this little case study, just while some questions build up. Please just ask as many as you like, and Jamie will be passing them to us.
Yeah, to help you out. So the site you can see in front of you is called K-Pop Way. So we really just wanted to quickly kind of touch on this because Fabrizio, who runs K-Pop Way, is actually a really clever guy, we think. He's identified an incredibly popular niche, which is K-pop. And if you don't know what K-pop is, where have you been for the last few years? K-pop stands for Korean pop. So this is stuff like Gangnam Style.
Yeah, everyone knows Gangnam Style.
Yeah, exactly. Most watched video of all time.
But I think this is a great example of an excellently executed niche radio station, right? And this is a good example of how a small station, can have a kind of a big online presence and have a big following, and doesn't necessarily need to have a huge amount of resources behind it, e.g. teams of marketing people or presenters and all this kind of thing. The internet can allow you to tap into really specific groups of enthusiasts. We like to call them raving fans. So, rather than just having people who are listening to your station, they actually become fans and they keep coming back time and time again. And it kind of creates a perpetual growth, which is what you want to see.
Yeah, so K-pop fans, as James has said, they're an incredibly fanatic bunch, and they're very, very loyal to their favourite bands and singers. Now, Fabrizio has identified that, and he's taken advantage of it in a really interesting way. So he uses Twitter for shoutcast, as social media is very important to him, and he also has dedicated iPhone and Android apps, so he knows the market, he understands, the importance of having a presence on those platforms for people.
The thing is, you need to get your presence right to start off with, and all of the tools we've got here at Wavestream kind of allow you to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mobile apps, the web player, integration with Twitter, so your fans or your followers are kept up to date on what's currently on air, all these kind of things, and really just obviously get the basic stuff right too. Make it easy for people to listen. Right on this homepage, you've got a radio player, you've got options to listen via different desktop media players. There's even a link to tune in down there.
Yeah.
So just things like this, just make it nice and easy for people to listen, or if they have issues like tuning in with one type of method of listening, that they can easily just switch to a different one.
Yeah, that's very true.
Maybe some people want to use Windows Media Player still, even though it's kind of fairly out of date now. But iTunes obviously is what a lot of people use.
Yeah.
But maybe they don't want to have the browser open with something playing in the browser because they're busy doing other things. So they want something in the background that's not going to get interrupted. They're not going to close that tab. So make sure those options are available to your listeners.
Yeah, definitely. He's got all of these touch points, essentially.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the majority of K-pop Wave's traffic comes through Twitter. It's about 45% of his traffic, but he also sees very good referrals through Facebook, which is about 25%, and also via Google, so that's kind of organic traffic, essentially, based around the things that he's posting. Now, he has some really clever marketing tactics and gamification strategies that appeal to his listeners incredibly. So each day what they do, they have featured programs which are focused on specific artists. So then what Fabrizio does, he connects with the fan bases of these artists on social media, and he uses the show as a way to allow them to gather around the music. So again, that's that sense of community that internet radio has. So these featured programs are really, really important to the fans. So, whilst the show is on, they're tweeting backwards and forwards between each other. They're using the chat widget on this site, and this is essentially amplifying his station's reach across social media. So the more listeners that each show attracts, the longer the show goes on for, which is pretty neat, actually.
Yeah. So this is a classic example of growth hacking.
Yeah.
And it's a classic example of creating something called a viral loop. And a viral loop is effectively when something causes other people to promote it. And the more people that promote it, the more people find out about it, and then they promote it too, and you kind of get this snowball motion, which is fantastic for publicity, and also doesn't cost you anything because it's all via social media. And by the way, just to go off on a slight tangent, if you're interested in learning a bit more about the science behind these kind of things and learning some growth hacking strategies, just like Fabrizio has used on K-pop, if you go on over to internetradiomonthly.com, last October, we created a course. You can purchase it for a one-off fee on that website, and we go over various different growth hacking strategies. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. So basically, as once these shows reach a minimum number of listeners, the shows continue, and if they don't, then the show ends. So obviously, these K-pop fans, being kind of fanatic anyway, that's just it's like catnip to them, isn't it? They just go crazy for it.
And the key thing to just illustrate here is that each of the shows focuses on one artist. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
So he's tapping into fans who spend every, in some cases, every moment of every day obsessing over this kind of particular artist. And because they love the artist so much, they want their artist to get exposure on this radio station.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and then the other thing is what they want to do is they also want to beat the other fan clubs.
Yeah.
You know, it's really a very interesting kind of gamification strategy going on there. So then the other thing he does is he allows listeners to vote on a weekly top 10. So he lists 20 new songs at the start of each week, and then towards the end of the week, the top 10 songs that are voted on get played. So again, this is very interesting because what he's doing, So what we're doing here is we're allowing our audience to do our marketing for us. You know, and it's encouraging his listeners to share with their friends. That increases their chance of their favorite song being in the top 10. You know, and I'd say this for Fabrizio, this has actually been a very, very, very successful strategy to the extent that listeners are even sending him like CDs of the tracks that he should be covering. So they're doing even more than just the marketing for him. They're actually sourcing the content as well now. Yeah, I mean that's very, very clever, really, isn't it?
Absolutely.
You know, and like we said, the K-pop fans, they're quite a fanatic bunch, and by sharing and voting on social media, they're helping to introduce a highly targeted bunch of other listeners at no cost whatsoever. Yeah, you know, and that's really, I think that's really clever. And again, it's going back to what we're saying. This is about community, and what K-pop Way understand is community, and using social media to bind that community together. You know, ultimately, radio and why it's always been popular, it's a shared experience. You gather around, you're listening, and you know other people are also sharing that experience with you around something that you all love. You know, and in this case, it's K-pop. Okay, so next we're going to talk about some of our predictions for the future of online radio. Should we just touch on some of that before we kind of go into the questions? We're beginning to see quite a few questions come in now.
Absolutely. So we'll quickly go over some predictions of the future.
Let me get this. And okay, right, we're back.
So, cool. Okay, do you want to start with yours?
Yeah, why not? Yeah. I'll go first. That's fine. Cool. Okay, so I mean, the first thing, which is kind of an obvious thing, but I think we're just going to see internet radio continuing to grow. I mean, especially as more developing nations come online.
Yeah,
definitely. I mean, if you think about it, so that mobile growth is causing huge amounts of growth in this area, but then there's a large percentage of the people all over the world that aren't even connected yet.
There's some research which suggests that we're going to see web usage, which has obviously seen it go up a lot in the past 5 years.
Yeah.
But particularly when we get to about 2017 to 2019, we're going to just see this big hike in traffic online. And I think that's probably because, as I say, more. Okay, yes, everyone's online in the United Kingdom, in Canada, in the USA, in Australia, but there are developing countries, and obviously there are people who are online as well. In some countries, for example, China, but it's all very like they've kind of almost got their own internet.
Yeah.
And there's aspects of that which they don't. Their certain websites are banned. They can't have Google, I think. Or,
yeah.
So obviously, as things change in those countries, or in certain developing countries, which the internet usage, smart, they all have mobile phones, but they won't necessarily be web-connected devices.
Yeah.
So that's obviously going to be sort of key impacts in this growth we're going to see.
Yeah, definitely. And audio is obviously probably better suited to that early kind of growth, perhaps more so than video, because it obviously requires more kind of faster internet, etc.
Okay.
And slightly better devices.
Sure.
So the next one, I think we're going to see more platforms popping up. So I think the days of it just being TuneIn or Shoutcast are not numbered per se. They're going to be big. TuneIn just growing phenomenally. They got something like 50 million investment last year. So they're plowing that into getting listeners on board.
Absolutely, and create a really good experience for listeners.
Yeah.
I think as well, what I'm kind of expecting is platforms are going to become more interconnected. Now, a good example of this is the TV industry are only just really starting to catch up with the idea of, or production companies are only catching up with the idea of, well, okay, stuff doesn't actually have to be broadcast on TV now. We're seeing lots of Netflix exclusives where they're producing really high quality TV programs, with huge budgets, and they're just streaming them on Netflix, but they're not going out on terrestrial TV.
Well, it's like what we were talking about yesterday. So, Jamie Oliver, who's a TV chef in this country, so he has huge budgets for doing his TV shows, but then he also has a YouTube channel. So again, that's what we were saying, is about having presence on these platforms.
Yeah,
right?
He's embracing this idea of always on, always logged in, and he's actually creating content which is, not necessarily like just appealing to his fan base, but for example, if you Google for, I don't know, how to cook really good rice or something like this, he's just creating these small little kind of very niche videos showing people how to do basic things.
Yeah.
And obviously, in doing that, he's pulling in tremendous numbers of people who perhaps weren't particularly Jamie Oliver fans before, but they see all these videos, they're kind of quick, they're easy to digest, and you don't have to sit for a whole TV series with loads of adverts to kind of just get that tidbit of information.
Yeah, I think the other thing that's going to be very interesting, and this kind of builds on mobile, but it's actually about wearables and connected devices. So, what's radio going to look like on Google Glass? What's radio going to look like in the connected home of the future?
That'll be interesting to see, won't it? Yeah.
That's going to be really exciting, won't it? I mean, what was that thing we were looking at recently? It was a ring that then plays into your headphones.
Well, I think it's a concept device which uses a sort of a ring which you twist around, and it becomes an earpiece.
Yeah.
I don't know if it actually exists yet, but we might see things like that coming.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we will definitely start to see more connected devices over the next few years. Like the iPhone watch has been mooted about for a long time now, so that'll potentially be coming soon.
Yeah, my brother was actually asking me about Google Glass yesterday, saying, have you got one yet at the company? Is it a good investment? And I was like, well, they launched at £1,000 in the UK. I don't really know what we do with one yet. But,
no, I don't. But
cool.
Well, I think that's the thing though. Things launch expensive, and then they get cheaper as they go along, don't they? I mean, when videos were first released, it was £80 for a VHS.
Yeah.
I remember those days.
Another interesting concept which we talked about is seeing kind of like radio membership. So with radio stations that are getting decent amount, they've built this kind of audience, a community around the station. They're getting listeners coming back time and time again. How can you offer them value? How can you offer them value in terms of premium content, which obviously could be, say, you go and find 5 artists each month who are emerging. They're looking for publicity, and you give away some of their tracks as part of like a package. So every single month, perhaps your listeners get a load of free downloads as part of their membership. They have to pay for access to this, or maybe they access certain channels, and which is a model which has been used fairly frequently in the past with things like digitally imported. Obviously, they have a huge range of stations, and you can subscribe to them.
Yeah, so we're saying kind of the formats of radio stations might start evolving a little bit as well.
So they're not just radio stations anymore. There's more to it than that.
Yeah, content publishers essentially, aren't they?
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's going to be really interesting actually. So then one last thing I would say is actually, as listening hours increase, ad spend is going to keep increasing as well. So going back to those numbers before, we're talking about 1.3 billion over the next 2 years. Now, even if you don't use ads to monetize and you're not interested in using ads in any way, it's still a really good thing, because what it means is radio is in good health and it's continuing to grow. And all of the data that we've been looking at back that up. Okay. So I think that's really exciting.
Right, so should we start?
Let's do the questions. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So, first one. It's a techie one, and I'm going to leave that to you. Okay. So, what is the acceptable level of kbps you would recommend?
Well, we always recommend 128K these days. We find it's a good balance between quality and efficiency. I think 128K is arguably equivalent to CD quality. A lot of people say it's not. However, it's pretty good. It's acceptable quality in MP3 format. So we always set customers up with 128K, and most people's internet connections can listen to that on mobile 3G, etc. Can tune into a 128K stream without any problems. Whereas if you start going higher than that, sometimes you can run into difficulties because the bandwidth's not as available, especially on mobile devices.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, so the next one is, what was the other directory we mentioned after Shoutcast? So there was TuneIn, and the other one was Stitcher. Stitcher.com, which we can, I think what we'll do after this, we'll probably take the video and put it on the blog, so we'll have a bunch of the links that we've talked about and things that we've discussed throughout here, we'll put them on there as well for people. Next. Let me see. So, because very few providers have unlimited bandwidth, too high a bitrate may not be best. 64 kbps seems about right. For talk radio, 32 kbps is fine. I have talk radio, but I decided to go for 64 kbps.
I think that's a wise choice. Again, if you're broadcasting spoken word, whether That could be any kind of content like news or sport or anything like that. If you're just broadcasting spoken word, you can go with a lower quality stream, and it will still sound really good. If you go for another tip is to make sure if you're broadcasting really anything less than 128, go for mono, because actually, contrary to popular belief, well, firstly, if you're broadcasting spoken word, it will only be mono anyway, because the microphone is just a single unit. But if you're broadcasting, say, it's stereo 64, well, that's only 32K per channel, so you get a much better sound quality at lower bit rates if you're broadcasting mono.
Right. Okay. So it's essentially helping people to save money, really.
Yeah. But obviously, 64K means your bandwidth goes a lot further, and you can have more listeners.
Okay. So the next one, guys, what do you think about the new audio codec standard Opus? Could this be a solution to let AAC down and maybe MP3 streaming in some years?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not completely aware of it. I've heard of this, but I don't know a lot about it. I think one of the things with AAC, it's a great quality format. Technically, and there's another format called OGG, which is OGG, which has been around for years and years. It's open source. It's better than MP3. However, MP3 just so happened to get in there first, and therefore it became the most dominant format. And the same thing with AAC now. It's been around for probably 10 years or so, but it's still, in terms of online broadcasting, you do run into some issues with people not being able to tune in on AAC. MP3 works on everything pretty much. That's why we recommend it. It's kind of unfortunate, really, because as I say, there are technically better formats out there. But I think you've got to, as a radio station owner, you've got to sort of remember what's the point of your radio station. The point of your radio station is to have people listen to it, right? So if they can't listen because you're broadcasting in some format that isn't as common, then that's really okay. It might sound better, but if no one can hear your station,
what's the point?
It kind of defeats the object of having a station in the first place. So I always find that really funny how some people kind of forget that. Some and they sort of get too obsessed with well, this one's better, this one sounds better than that one. Well, go with what people can listen into easily. That's why we always recommend MP3.
So again, you're saying make things easier for the consumer.
Yeah, it's all about
or the listener.
Yeah, it's about delivering. That's the point of a station, isn't it? About delivering that service to your listeners.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So next, what's your tips on helping internet radio stations deal with international music licensing issues? Okay. Now this is quite an interesting one because
I think with a quick disclaimer to say, we're not lawyers, so you should probably seek professional advice. Etc. Etc.
Licensing's difficult. I mean, if you look at something like Pandora, they have a lot of money in investment. They have a lot of users, but they're not profitable.
Yeah.
And that's because they're hammered by things like licensing, and there's a lot of other things probably going on there with Pandora. But I do, that's kind of interesting. I think ultimately, you have to make the decision that's right for you. And as James said, we're not lawyers, so we can't say definitively do this. Now there is obviously there's PRS, there's Sound Exchange, so there's a lot of ways that you can hook into this and do that. But then also if say you're playing there's a station in Manchester called Silent Radio. And a really cool, interesting bunch of guys, and they play up and coming indie bands. So this is the stuff that you're going to hear on. Kind of like on BBC Six, really. I mean, it's really kind of cool music that's coming out, and because they're very much kind of involved in the music scene, they don't have any issues because they go directly to the artist that they want to cover.
If you've got the copyright holder's permission, or if you're indeed broadcasting royalty-free music, or you're doing your own content, spoken word, then you're not going to have any issues. There are services out there like streamlicensing.com, I think it's called. And there used to be one called Loud City, but I believe that's recently closed. Which will kind of take care of all that stuff for you. So we are a technology company. We focus on delivering awesome solutions for online radio, but we're not experts in copyright law. So exactly, probably best as I say, go and sort of. Ask around and just sort of do your own research there, and obviously seek advice from a qualified professional. Yeah,
definitely. Okay, so what new products have you got coming up to keep wave streaming ahead of the rest?
Right, so this is quite exciting. Unfortunately, we can't really tell you too much because we are working on something quite exciting, quite large. It's been really in development for the past couple of years. Obviously, more recent developments. As I mentioned, Steve is working on a brand new version of Listener Magnet,
Yeah.
which is going to teach awesome and up-to-date marketing tactics for 2014, which is going to be released. I think I was chatting to him earlier. Actually, he said that it's going to be should be done by August time, so August,
Cool.
September, I imagine. I'm really excited about that. Listener Magnet, when we last released it, was 2011.
Right. So a lot's
huge,
changed in that time.
Hugely successful. Yeah, we a lot of people were interested in learning ways to market their station online. So this one is going to be even better. I suspect we're going to have lots of exciting things, lots of ways to get ahead of the competition, I suppose.
Yeah.
But yeah, so working on a new platform, which, as I say, we can't really tell you too much about, but it is incredible.
It's incredible.
It's been such a challenge, both from every aspect, in terms of we've got a dedicated team working on this product actually downstairs, and they've been working on it now solidly for the last few months. But we've been working on and off for the past year or so, maybe a year and a half. Yeah. And so hopefully we can reveal more. I really want to, sort of want to say, but we'll be able to tell you more in the coming months.
Yeah, and I think this is the point. I think over the next few months we're going to be doing more of these kind of webinars for people. So hopefully, as we're getting closer to launching this new thing that we're talking about, we'll be able to reveal a little bit more then.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Great. Okay, so the next one, app or responsive website for radio. What do you think? That's a good one.
That's a very good one indeed. I would go actually as far as saying both, because
I agree.
You can build a website now online, and you can make it responsive, which means that it squishes down depending on the device size. So you might notice this if you go on some websites and you move your browser window around, that it kind of certain bits of content move around or disappear. It basically just means that the website responds to the size of the screen, which is really good, and we're seeing a lot. It's becoming increasingly more popular to build websites that way. It is quite hard to do, but obviously the thing with your radio station is, and going back to the K-pop example, there's two elements there, really, isn't there? There's the actual radio station itself, there's the audio stream that listen to, but then Fabrizio's built awesome amount of content around this and a community, and all of the stuff for his, all of his content and the community aspects to it. I think really the best way of delivering them is through the website, because creating an app with that much content on and keeping it all updated and stuff would just be a big undertaking.
Yeah.
But then if people are wanting to just listen to the radio station, the app is the way forward. And you've got to remember as well, an app isn't just for people who know about your station to download. It's also a marketing tool that you can actually attract new audiences with as well. So I don't think there's a really kind of definitive answer to that question. I think if you can do both, that's going to be beneficial to everyone, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the other point to make is, if you have a responsive website, what that means is that all of your kind of SEO and your ranking within your website is also there in your mobile website. Yeah, which is great.
Like with our iPhone app, we've got some awesome features which allow you to do things that you wouldn't be able to do with the website anyway, like the sleep timer and the the social integration, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so next one.
Wow, we're getting loads of questions.
Yeah, this is good actually. Yeah, stuff's coming in now. This is cool. Keep them coming, by the way. We're happy to answer as many as possible. Okay, so is it possible to provide an email message alerts when the stream is down or source is offline?
We don't currently have this feature. This is something that we've thought about before.
So this is kind of like a monitoring thing for people.
Again, there are services out there which you can do this. If you go to nodeping.com, that's Nodeping, nodeping.com, they are a monitoring service, and they will actually do this for you. They actually have a service which monitors your stream. There's a couple of others which will actually do the kind of thing where it actually detects if there's silence as well. Because obviously your server can still be online, but if there's nothing playing, then it won't notify you either. But yeah, nodeping.com, I believe they might have a free trial or a free plan, and they will actually email you or send you an SMS message if things are off.
Cool. Okay.
We've used them for website server monitoring, that kind of thing in the past.
Yeah. Okay, great. So, pardon me, sorry. Do you think that your plans for historical data reporting will be finished this year?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Stats will be increasingly better over the next year. And again, we may even be releasing a standalone stats product for people.
Yeah.
So they can hook their station in, make it kind of, and dig down into the data a bit more. Next. Sorry, just one moment. So, broadcasting live from your mobile device on the go. Do you have any plans to provide this, or are you aware of any third-party apps that do?
I think there might be one in the App Store. I'm not exactly sure. The issue is with this. There is one in the iPhone store which will broadcast. I can't remember what it's called. No idea. You might have to Google around for it. But there is an app in the iPhone store that will send you a stream to Shoutcast from this app.
Right.
But it will only use the microphone, which is built into the iPhone, which isn't terribly useful. You know, you can with iPhones and iPads plug in stuff into the data port at the bottom, and I mean, musicians have sort of things where they can add like an additional sound card almost. But as what I understand, the only way of broadcasting from an iPhone is just using the built-in mic, which really is limited, I think.
Okay. So, what device would you recommend developing for first? iPhone, Android, or mobile?
Mobile.
Sorry, Windows Mobile.
Or Windows
Sorry.
Mobile.
Yeah.
Well, I pretty much ruled out Windows Mobile.
Me too.
I think it kind of.
Yeah.
I think the thing is with Windows Mobile, it looked promising like about a year and a half ago, but I'm starting to think it's just.
It's not working.
Yeah, there was a little window of hope kind of for Microsoft because they came up with this interface which it does look
really cool. Yeah.
I just think now Android over the past year has grown so much.
I think
actually really Android and iPhone are kind of level. You know.
Yeah.
You should do both. You shouldn't just try and rule out one because they are both important. You know, again, a few years ago, everyone assumed that iPhone was so important and Android wasn't. There are so many people now with Android devices, and there are so many Android devices which simply are better than iPhones.
Absolutely,
now, technically speaking, and it's just really, really come along at leaps and bounds. I think again, Android was this sort of slightly buggy, geeky bit of software when it first came out for people who are a bit more like techie. I think it's way mainstream now, so iPhone and Android are the way forward.
Yeah, they're both equally as important, I would say. Cool. Okay. Next.
Just to remind everyone as well, we're giving away a free product at the end of this, so we're going to kind of just wrap the questions up now, and then we'll get on to the final part of the webinar where we have got some great stuff for you.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so I currently pay Get Marcy for my fancy past tracks played info, which allows folks to purchase direct from my website. Do you have any plans to develop that with the player suite? Right, yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
So I think currently as I say, we're working on this new product, this new sort of platform, and we're going to kind of take sort of feedback like that into consideration for that.
Yeah.
Currently, the player suite does what it does very well. And yeah, there are obviously other things out there to do that. So I don't think we've got current plans to build something like Get Marcy exactly, but we might, build that into future products or something similar to that. Yeah, right. It's still obviously good to allow people to. With our advanced player, you can actually click and it will take you to iTunes.
Right. Yes, of course. Yeah, that's a good point.
So it's sort of, but it obviously doesn't show history at the moment.
Okay. So
one last question, have we got?
Yeah, I think we've got one last question. Your Twitter integration is awesome, thank you. How do I achieve this on Facebook?
Okay, so I think, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, well, I guess, essentially, you can embed your player directly in there, right? So, you know,
you're talking about the song track, the tracks being posted to Twitter. The obvious way of doing this is just to link your Facebook with Twitter.
Yeah.
There's a couple of ways of doing this.
Yeah. You can use if this then that.
If this then that, which is
ifttt.com. Yeah. And so basically, what you can do is you can then set it up so as your Twitter for Shoutcast app is pulling the information in, it's then posted directly to Facebook.
Yeah. The other way of doing it is actually you can link Twitter and Facebook directly. Just through the Twitter. If you go to Twitter settings, you can just tell it to. You can just link it with your Facebook and tell it to post to your page. We've done that on Wave Streaming. If you go on Wave Streaming's Facebook page, you'll see some of the posts say via Twitter underneath, which is basically because we posted something to Twitter and automatically then gets published to Facebook. So that's easy to set up. That's kind of one of the reasons why we didn't build in integration.
Yeah, because it makes sense, doesn't it?
You can easily just set Facebook to pull in content from Twitter, or use an external service like if this then that to do it automatically for you.
Yeah.
So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, great.
Okay, so that pretty much concludes everything we've got for you today in terms of the webinar, and we want to just leave you with some special offers, which and also a sort of a free giveaway as well. So let's just switch back to our
on screen. Yeah, there we go. That's the one.
So if you head on over to wavestreaming.com/deals, we've got a range of special offers which are exclusively available to viewers of this webinar. We've got bundles of our different apps. So we've got the mobile bundle, which is Android and iPhone. We've also got Android, iPhone, and web. We've also got a bunch of other deals. We've got half off Internet Radio Cash, which is an excellent course showing you how to make money with your radio station and bond with your audience. We've got half off our backup product, which is to protect your computer files against data loss. So you install a little program and it basically pushes all your stuff up onto the cloud. $5 off our Twitter for Shoutcast app, which we've just been talking about.
Yeah.
And if you fill in this form at the bottom here, we'll give you one of our Internet Radio monthly editions from November, which we talk about mobile broadcasting, and it really goes into how to use mobile broadcasting as a sort of a listener magnet, a way to get listeners to your radio station. So thanks very much for your attention today. We really have appreciated your time, and we hope that you've got something useful from this webinar. It's been really great fun this afternoon just sitting and going through this stuff. We're going to try and do a couple more of these because it's been a year since we did the last webinar, so we're going to perhaps plan a couple more in the sort of...
Yeah, I think the plan is for us to do these semi-regularly now.
Yeah, definitely. So that's bye from us.
Thanks.
Thanks for watching.